Well, sometimes triathlon is a bit like buses. You wait 2 weeks for a race and then two come along at once. Just hours after we soaked up the action in Miyazaki, the World Cup season has moved on to South America for the 14th and final event of the year. We're in Brasilia for what could be a spectacular finale to 2024. The elite women's race is coming up live in a few minutes' time. We're racing over the sprint distance today, so fast and furious once they do get underway, and that JK Bridge is the absolute centrepiece of this race. Spectacular construction, and the weather is cooperating as well, which is good to report. We're in the capital of Brazil, in the highlands of the country. Population of around about 3 million people in the urban area here. Took over as the capital from Rio back in 1960. One lap swim, 750 metres swum clockwise. And just a point to note, is a very long run into the first transition, so that will benefit some and not others. They get onto the bikes for a 20k ride made up of 4 equal 5-kilometre laps. It's essentially an out-back course, as you can see, but with a little bit of a twist on the other side of the bridge. Takes them over the famous JK Bridge, as I mentioned. We've got some dead turns on every lap, plus the long straights and one climb. So potentially good for breakaways. Then the run, it's flat for the most part, but there is one ascent on each lap that again takes the athletes across the bridge. They'll race for 2 laps of 2.5 kilometres each. And that makes up the 5k total distance. My name's Trevor Harris, alongside me Helen Jenkins. And Helen, it's a small but intriguing field of women. Makes it tough to find a winner. Sandra Dole of France has found some form lately. We've got Summer Rappaport, who comes here off the back of a medal in Tongyong a couple of weeks ago, but probably you could make a case for half a dozen of these.
Yeah, it's a really small field, but lots of athletes that could definitely contend for the win. And number 1, Rosa Tapia, just coming off the back of a win in Viña del Mar in a Triathlon Cup just last week. Gina Serranos, who won a World Championship, won a World Cup medal already this year. So plenty of women up there, as has Maria Velasquez from Colombia. She had a medal back in Wollongong at the start of the year in a World Cup.
Dominika Jamnicki may not be that far away either. He's had a good second half of the year. Eleanor Lawler, the young American, be fascinating to see how she goes this afternoon. Victoria Lopez, of course, there'll be a lot of home hopes behind her. We know how superb a swimmer she is. Great to see Tamara Gordon back in the lineup. So many injury issues over the last few years, but she's fit again now. 25 women in total taking their chance here this morning. It is early, just approaching 7 a.m. local time in Brasilia. We're actually right in the heart of the rainy season, but in this part of the world, but we got lucky. No precipitation is forecast, and it's warm, as you can see, even for, well, not quite 7 a.m, 20 degrees centigrade, that's 70 Fahrenheit, and just a very light breeze coming off the east.
A warm water temperature at 24, so no wetsuits.
Almost feels unusual to have a pontoon start. We've had so many beach starts this season, haven't we?
Yeah, it has been more beach starts, and this is an unusual swim, as the boys are in a, it's not that sort of straight out, they go out and kind of take a turn left under the bridge and go around, so it's slightly more confusing than normal. I think it was last year, this race was over the Olympic distance, and there was definitely a little bit of confusion, and someone went a little bit wrong at the boys.
Of course, we saw that with Cassandra Beaugrand in the grand final not so long ago.
Yeah, I don't think anyone has ever gone that far, of course, and to make it back as she did, absolutely incredible. So if anyone does go off course, don't worry, you just need to do a Beaugrand and get yourself onto the back of the pack.
It should be called a Beaugrand, shouldn't it, if you go miles away from where you should be. The women coming up, as you can see, that's Gina Serena wearing number 2. Verena Steinhauser will wear 3. Very, very experienced athlete, of course.
Yeah, now a 2-time Olympian. She's not had the season she would have liked. She really wants to finish the season well. She does, she's tired. It's a long year with an Olympics in the middle. There's the stress of all the qualification and selection issues. and then the Olympics, and this huge emotional dump afterwards. So to get yourself up and keep racing towards the end of the season is quite tricky.
Summer Rappaport, who said after she won that silver in Tongyong a couple of weeks back that she'd spoken to her husband about quitting the sport, said she may have a rethink now, and that will almost certainly happen if she goes well here today. Sandra Dode definitely has a live chance. When she's on, we know how good she can be, the 28-year-old. She's won 2 of her last 3 races.
Yeah, it comes down to the swim for Dode. There's some really good swimmers in there, and she knows she's going to have to swim well because she could be exposed in this smaller field today.
Velasquez of Colombia, whose strength is on the run.
Sofia Rodriguez, she's a good runner, Rodriguez. There's lots of Mexicans in the field, some really young athletes too.
Just saw Dominika Jamnicki go past, who won a America's Cup race on home soil in July.
Mercedes Romero as well. She got a World Cup medal back in Hitalco in 23, so just a year ago there. There's so many women that have got World Cup medals in this field, and then we've got Rosa Tapia, Summer Rappaport that have got medals at the World Championship Series. So although this field is small, there is a lot of talent in there.
Yeah, and I think it's really hard to predict. We know Lopez won't be very far away in the water. And you can hear the home support.
Yeah, she is one of the most well-known Brazilian athletes. She's been to 2 Olympics now. She is one of the best swimmers in the sport. We've actually got 2 of the best swimmers in the sport here, because Summer Rappaport as well. When is she ever outside the top kind of 3 or 4 coming out the swim in any race, any distance? So along with Lopez as well. And I feel like Lopez is really going to apply the pressure here today.
It's actually Lopez's first race since the Olympics, where she finished 25th, helped Brazil to 8th in the relay.
Yeah, she's done some other. She's done a half Ironman. She's been racing the Super Tri, so she has been. She is a little bit fatigued. She says she is coming in here a little bit tired, but you don't not want to race your home World Cup. You've got to go out there and try and support the home event, and she'll obviously love to have a great race.
And we've got a strong Brazilian contingent in the men's race as well, which, by the way, will start at 9 a.m. local time. So in a couple of hours from now. Both the medal ceremonies, incidentally, will take place after that men's race. Stratton of the USA coming out. And she'll be followed by another American, Tamara Gordon. It's great to see her back.
I mean, it's hard to forget how good Tamara Gorman is. Not many women win a World Junior title and then a World Under-23 title. It's so few women that have done it, and she is one of those, but she's just really been set back by injuries over the last year. So it'd be great to see her come back into that form, because she is such a talented athlete.
Marion Kim Mangrubang of the Philippines just coming out, which means there are only 2 more women to emerge from behind that large poster. Gelati of Brazil, and another Brazilian, Machado, will be the last woman introduced. There she is.
Some really young Brazilians in the field, born in 2006 and 2007. So Summer Rappaport is actually, not that it matters, but is one of the older women in the field, but just that massive difference in age here.
So stand by for the start. So away we go. It looked like a pretty clean start. 25 women into Lake Paranoa under the backdrop of the famous JK Bridge in this sprint event, the final World Cup event of 2024. And with such a small field, it will be interesting to see if there is effectively some serious separation here. We see that sometimes when there are only 25 here. And some women's races effectively can be over almost before they've begun if they're not careful.
Summer Rappaport started closest to us on the pontoon. But we've got, looks like maybe Victoria Lopez heading out in the middle. She had a silver hat on. So you head up, really looking where she's going. We don't often see athletes. She almost came to a bit of a standstill there. She was checking the position.
Complete contrast, these conditions, to the Miyazaki World Cup race. If you were with us, what, about 7 or 8 hours ago, where they were swimming in the sea, and clearly there was a bit of chop. Here, it's dead calm on the lake.
So Sandra Dode started right next to Summer Rappaport, so that's the perfect place for her. She knows that they're really good feet. So what she wants to do is, as they dive in, and just get straight onto those feet and stick on them. I mean, it's a hard job. See, Rappaport there is moving up just on the outside in that yellow hat. She's definitely an athlete that moves through the field throughout the swim. She does have a good start, but especially that sort of second half of the swim, that back end, that's when we see her come to the front and challenge for the lead.
Well, this is amazing. Just as we were saying, they haven't even been swimming for 2 minutes. And look at the gap between first and then about, I don't know, 9th or 10th. Those women are already some 30 meters behind. See the officials in the water there keeping a very close eye on proceedings. We had a high-profile penalty actually in Miyazaki a few hours ago in the men's race for one of the triathletes, Sagan, cut underneath the buoy, which you're not allowed to do. 10-second time penalties, by the way, today in these sprint races.
Yeah, and cut under the buoy makes it seem that they're really trying to shorten the course, but it's kind of when a lot of athletes reach there at the same time, there's that almost that pushing down of bodies under the water, and it feels like it's almost like a bit of an escape, is it, just to slip under and get out of the way of the bodies. So it's not always sort of an intentional sort of cheat, it's almost like getting yourself out of trouble, but you obviously can't do it because there is an advantage to doing it. But it's obviously, that doesn't really tend to happen when the field is as spread out as it is already. And so, like you said, in 3 minutes.
Incredible, isn't it?
I'm imagining that would be Victoria Lopez and Summer Rappaport. I mean, Lopez, as we just mentioned, she raced a half Ironman earlier after the Olympics, said she needed a change from the World Triathlon races just for a little bit, a bit of a refresh. So raced Cozumel 70.3 and she got a second there, and then she's been racing the Super Tri Series, and I believe she's done every one of those, which is 5 races all over the world. It's pretty intense racing, and she's been the fastest swimmer in that by far. They have different leagues for the swim, who's the fastest swimmer, and pretty much she's always up there scoring points on that. So I think there is a bit of fatigue setting in, but even no matter how tired she is, she always swims well.
It's the old adage in triathlon about you can't win a race in the water, but you can lose it. It's a bit of a cliche, which is why we don't tend to say it very much. But in this kind of a race, it's actually appropriate because you can already see the massive separation. We got, looks like 2 women and then a sizable gap back to another, well, solo swimmer, a couple just behind her, and some of the women towards the back haven't even gone around that buoy yet.
Now, if this is Lopez and Rappaport, they could definitely do this alone. It's 20 kilometres. I've seen Lopez do this on her own in several races. I think it was a Pan Am, it might have been one of the Pan Am champs a few years ago. So she went for it alone, like solo. She did get caught on the run, but she's quite happy to push the pace on the bike. She's a member of breakaway groups. When they have that breakaway, she's strong on the bike. She really contributes. And we know Summer Rappaport does. I'm thinking back to that race in Montreal. I think it was 2 years ago where it's Summer Rappaport and Taylor Knibb went off the front of the group together and managed to gap the rest of the field. So these two up front is a danger for the rest of the field. They are 2 athletes that will definitely get away, could get away, and are happy to do it.
Yeah, it'd be interesting though, if that is the case, or they try and do that, with Summer Rappaport's biking, because sometimes that's been a little bit of an Achilles heel. That's Rappaport currently with a yellow cap.
I think on Rappaport's Achilles heel, it's more the technical element than the actual fitness and strength. If the course isn't that technical, then it's all about that power and fitness. Then she's so good. It's just that technical ability which has let her down in the past, and that has been. She has had a few nasty crashes. She had another one at the back end of last year, where she broke her jaw. So having crashes like that really does make you nervous on the bike, and it's something she has had to work on and build that confidence with.
But I thought it was interesting what she said after Tongyong, Helen, where, you know, she genuinely said, look, I was thinking about, you know, packing it in, and then suddenly you get a medal and you get a result, and you think, oh, no, maybe I can carry on for a little while.
Oh, and the year she's had, I mean, I just mentioned that crash, so broken jaw, I think it was a broken collarbone, so she had to build her way back into fitness. And she said she just kept breaking down. She'd do a few weeks training and something else would go wrong. A few weeks training, something else would go wrong. She couldn't get healthy, she couldn't get fit, and you start to not trust your body. You think it's never going to come good again. So I think she really had to kind of take a step back, kind of regroup. I think she went back to her old coach. She's changed what she's doing, and she's almost changed her destiny again. And she's known the form has been there. She's really disappointed not to show it in Torremolinos, but to show it in Tongyong, it means yeah, I can actually do this again. I think it's really nice to see, and it's great that we're not going to lose her from the sport. She's such an interesting athlete to watch.
I mean, she said the same. She said she considered quitting, and then she got that somewhat surprising podium in Montreal a couple of years ago. So we know there's always a big race in her, potentially, wherever she's competing.
Yeah, and she was very close to that win in Tongyong as well. I'm sure she would have liked to go, she would love to go one step better here. And she's bringing, you come in with confidence, don't you? Thinking, right, I was second just 2 weeks ago. I want to make that next step up. The field is so strung out already.
Yeah, they might have another minute and a half, something like that, in the water. Maybe a bit less than that.
Yeah, the two athletes out front, I mean, I'm not sure exactly what that gap is. Then we have a group that's bunched together, and there are almost lots of athletes off the back of that. The bike course isn't hugely technical. It's just straight out and over the bridge and back. Yeah. But it is a bit of a rise over the bridge, and if it's windy, it's not the easiest course.
Yeah, not too much of a wind today, just a fairly gentle breeze. And that gap is hugely significant potentially here between the top two and the rest. We're assuming it's the Brazilian at the front, Lopez.
Yeah, and it was definitely number 4, wasn't it, Rappaport in behind. But Lopez had a silver hat on, and judging by recent form, we would imagine it to be her. I'm surprised Rosa Tapia hasn't made it over. She's a strong swimmer. She is an excellent cyclist as well. She's one of the athletes that might have that ability to jump over to these two. But there's not going to be many in the field that do have that ability. It's going to be a tricky challenge to get back to these two athletes.
Look at the clear water they've got.
And there's the exit, and like you mentioned earlier, they do have quite a run into transition.
It's going to be 10 minutes for this 750-metre swim.
It's quite a long swim, isn't it?
Yeah.
It does feel like they've been in the water a while.
So actually bang on 10 minutes, and from the cheers, you definitely know who it is.
Yeah, that's Lopez.
So Lopez leads Rappaport, and the rest are still in the water. As you mentioned, this long run into T1, where they'll get on the bikes. I'd imagine Rappaport's going to get close right up. There we go.
Yeah, wow, 20 seconds. Just saw Tamara Gorman coming through. Looked like she was towards the front of that group.
We do have a few issues, unfortunately, with our timing, so you may not see on screen, as you usually do, exactly where everybody is. So we'll do our best kind of manually to let you know what the gaps are. But Lopez and Rappaport are going to have a two-woman breakaway here.
And it's a big gap, isn't it? It was about 20 seconds at least out of the swim.
So away they go. I've got the stopwatch on them, so when we see the chasers start, we'll know exactly what the gap is, but it's going to be significant.
There's Tapia. Good transition from her. Velasquez there as well. Oh, look, no, someone's bike rack's gone with them. I thought that was Marina Steinhauser.
I've not seen that before.
No.
I've never seen that before.
Well, they're normally pretty heavy and hard to move.
That's not a penalty.
No.
That's just very unfortunate.
Yeah.
About 22 seconds on my rough stopwatch, the gap between those two and the chasers.
Might be a lonely day for these two athletes. They're going to have to work really hard. I think that group is quite big behind them, but there is a few really strong athletes in there. Rosa Tapia actually got her first ever World Cup medal here last year in Brasilia. That was a third place position. She almost did it backwards. She got the World Series medal before getting the World Cup. It doesn't always work like that. Yeah,
that was that standout race in Yokohama, wasn't it, where she came second.
She's come into some really good form at the end of this year as well. So, winning Vina Del Mar, but getting 11th in the series final in Torremolinos. It was a really strong race there, and 7th in Way High. So really coming to good form towards the back end of this season.
So they're going across the JK Bridge, which is one of the notable features of Brasilia. Opened back in 2002, named after a former president who basically was considered the main figure to have designed and constructed the city. 1,200 meters long it is. If you work in old money, that's just shy of 4,000 feet.
And they pretty much go to the end of the bridge, turn, and
come
back. Yeah, so no hiding on this course. The chase group behind know exactly where you are and what you're doing. And I say it's not a hilly course, is it? But there's a definite rise from one end of the bridge to the other, and then obviously back down towards transition where they're cycling. So not a flat course. It's kind of one of those really grindy courses. There's not always going to be sort of pressure on the hills. You're going to have to keep pushing, especially for those athletes in the group when they go around that dead turn, that kind of push and that catch to try and get back on. So our two leaders just approaching their first turnaround point. There is actually some timing up, and looking at the athletes that are in that second group, we've got Rosa Tapia, Tamara Gorman, Macea Alvarez, Marina Steinhauser, Sofia Rodriguez, and Shanae Williams. Sandra Dode as well with a good swim. She's quite close and had a really quick transition to put herself into that group. So that's really good from Dode.
I was 1 second out with my stopwatch. It's 23 seconds as the official gap between those two and the rest. It's actually first woman out behind them. Gorman was actually in fourth, just in front of Tamara Gorman was Rosa Tapia. So some big names right at the head of the chasing group, but at the moment those two are away and clear.
And this is a good scenario for both of these athletes. They might be feeling a little bit fatigued. I think just that back end of the season. I think Rappaport, more so than Rappaport probably is a bit more, got a bit more momentum. There definitely seemed like a lot of positivity radiating off her in her interview. She seemed really excited to get back out there and racing. Whereas Lopez, I feel, does feel like that she's almost hanging on a little bit for the end of the season. But once you get into this scenario and you're racing, all of that kind of falls away. And you're just in the moment, you're really pushing. And for Lopez, she knows she's going to need a pretty good sizable gap. She knows her run, especially with a couple of injuries she's had at the back end of the season, it's maybe not going to be good enough to outrun some of the others. So it's a great opportunity here for her.
One last push. This is the final event of the World Cup season. Just a little look back there, just to see where everybody is. Ideally, of course, these two will share the workload.
So far, it looks like they are.
Yeah.
And we haven't seen what's actually happening behind of how that group is working, and if it has separated, because there was a lot of athletes that came out quite close together. I think we've got about 10 athletes that came out of transition relatively close together, so whether those 10 are actually stuck together and actually working. You mentioned Rosa Tapias is a strong athlete on the bike, but she's not going to be able to do it on her own. She's going to need a few of those athletes to try and work with her, especially when you've got these two strong women at the front working.
Yeah, well, potentially. I mean, she could work with the likes of Tamara Gordon. Steinhauser maybe as well.
Yes, Steinhauser. Sorry, I forgot that she's in there. She's such a strong athlete on the bike. She's all round really good, Steinhauser. She's had quite a lot of World Cup medals as well, but it just doesn't seem to have really clicked with her this last couple of years. She obviously qualified for the Olympics. She had a 12th in Weihai, she had a 5th in Rome, so solid results, but just hasn't managed to get that podium ticked off the last couple of years. Just in the background, saw the group going the other way. These two athletes now just on a slightly more technical descent down towards transition, then they go through transition and then back up and do it all again for 3 more laps. There's our chase group coming down as well. I'm not sure that's still the 20 seconds, but it looks like we've got about the 10 of them coming down. Verena Steinhauser was at the front of that group.
Yeah, that's no surprise.
Luckily, transition has been reset up. There's no bike stands in the way. Really unfortunate there. One of the athletes obviously just pulled out the bike and the stand went with her.
Need to glue them down next year. So we got the stopwatches out here just to see what that gap is. It was 23 seconds when they came out of T1, the advantage for Rappaport and Lopez. And it's just fractionally less on my watch. Not too much different, really. Just a note, and it's good news really. So you might remember Luisa Baptista had a terrible accident here. An accident about 11 months ago. She was in a coma for 3 months. Out of the hospital after 6, and she is here today. She still can't swim or bike, but she can run, and she's going to be doing some running later with some of the other Brazilian athletes, so that's good to see.
Oh, it's incredible comeback for her, and it was so devastating as she was one of those athletes, the Brazilian athletes that was, you know, on the edge of making that Olympic team. It was, yeah, so heartbreaking for it to have happened at that time, and it's great that she's back and she's able to exercise as well. It was a training accident, it was, so I think she was hit off by a car that wasn't meant to be on the road, so really devastating. I'm so glad that she is well and back and here and supporting the other athletes.
We have our roving reporters out on the course, and they're telling us that although we haven't seen the pictures, Gina Sereno is in, well, no man's land really. She's between groups 2 and 3, which is certainly not where you want to be, and may well come back to that second chasing group in the next few minutes. But she's putting herself severe disadvantage in the early stages here. 20 minutes in, and still Rappaport and Lopez enjoying a significant lead on their second trip across the bridge. They are fortunate that it isn't a particularly windy day, because you can see how exposed that is. And if we had a real breeze blowing, that would be a little uncomfortable, but not a problem today. Actually, the forecast earlier in the week was that we were going to get quite a bit of rain this morning, but so far that's held off, and the weathermen say it's going to stay dry, so let's take them at their word.
Just seen our second group there. Looks like it's Serena Steinhauser at the front in that blue suited the Italians. Noticed that as she came back through too. And this is good. If we stay on this position here, we'll get a good view really of where that group is, and the athletes will be using that. So whether they've got coaches on the course with timing boards or letting them know, this section here is perfect. They know exactly where they crossed the last time and whether they're gaining or losing ground. To me, it looks quite similar. They've managed to hold the gap, these two athletes, on their own.
Yeah, I think they may have lost like a second or a couple of seconds on that first lap. They'll take that, because the longer that they can stay away, obviously the more confident they're going to be. And psychologically, the more damaging it's going to be for these chasers.
Velasquez from Colombia just coming up there and doing a turn. Some good runners in that little group they've got there, with Sandra Dode, Rena Steinhauser, Tapia. There's yeah, some good ones. It's going to be interesting, especially if everything stays as it is. With that sort of about 20-second gap. So unfortunate for Gina Sereno, she just missed that. It looked like she was in, as we heard, she is in no man's land, so riding solo, which is an incredibly tough place to be. At least these two at the front, they've got each other to work with, share the load.
Yeah, they've been sharing it very effectively so far. About halfway through their second lap. As you can see, no sign of anyone in the distance there, keeping that margin of around 20 seconds or so in front.
They've both been living in Boulder in Colorado as well, so maybe we'll have trained together a little bit over the last couple of years. Sometimes the swim sessions cross over, or the bike sessions, so it might be a comfortable situation for those two athletes. And when they're riding together in that close proximity for a while, you almost instinctively know when it's your time to come through or when the other athlete's suffering, and you can kind of say, right, you know, you take a big turn, or I'll lead this more technical section. And it looks like they've got a really nice, smooth working group at the front. At the back here, we haven't had as much sight on them, so it's hard to know what's happening, but they're obviously still keeping the pressure on, because these two aren't being allowed to get away up the road. That gap is holding. I think they're the men going down to the start of the race, not the women on the course there.
No, they'll be off in about just over an hour and a half, the men, at 9 AM local time.
Or is that a slight advantage going second, in that you've watched the women and seeing what happened in the women's race? But then it is nice for the first athletes to get the race done. They get to enjoy watching. There's positives of both.
Lopez has just gone a little way ahead of Rappaport here. I think Rappaport's going to get back on.
Yeah, I think he's just on the descent.
Yeah.
Just taking those corners and roundabouts, just a little bit of speed. So coming up to halfway through the bike. It's hard to know, but that gap might have come down a little.
So halfway for these two, Rappaport and Lopez, 10k down, 10k to go. Well, certainly they've stopped the chasers making any kind of serious inroads into that lead. Yeah, if anything, then it might have just gone out a few seconds.
Yeah, it might have gone. Getting close to that 30 is definitely holding.
28 seconds. The official gap now. So they've done really well on that lap, Rappaport and Lopez. Chasers managed to pull a couple of seconds back on the first lap, but they've got it back and a bit of change on the second.
And I mean, Rappaport could win from wherever she is, you know, if all the field come back together. She does have that run. But I'd say one of the biggest threats to her is probably Sandra Dode. And Sandra Dode is currently about 30 seconds behind. Dode had the fastest run in Tonyung 2 weeks ago and finished in 4th position. See Rappaport and that they were away in the breakaway. So for Rappaport, I think if she's looking at just Tonyung and what happened there, that 30-second buffer over Sandra Dode would probably be enough for Rappaport to win this. Well, but most likely, just with the strength of Rappaport's run. But we can't just look at Dode. There obviously is other good strong runners in that second group at the moment, including Maria Velasquez from Colombia. There's Gina Serrano. She looks like she's on her own with one other athlete. I think that's Solis or Romero. Field is really splintered. I mean, quite often we have those maybe one or two bigger groups, but just because the field isn't that big, that every group is small and there's yeah, just quite exposed really.
There was a lot of damage done in the water, wasn't there? And it's kind of carried on from there on the bike.
Yeah.
Never won a World Cup medal, Lopez. She's obviously been decorated in Pan Am Games, but not in a World Cup event. So, massive incentive for her here, especially on home soil, obviously.
Yeah, I'd say her best ever result was a 6th in Abu Dhabi back in 2022. So that was the series final and she came 6th there. That was a fantastic result from her.
Yeah, and she had a really good test event in Tokyo, didn't she? She was top 5, I think.
Yeah. So she's such a good swimmer that quite often she's in the front. So, well, she's always in the front. So when that breakaway goes, she's there and she's a strong cyclist and she's got stronger. It used to be that she was the one that got dropped at the end, but over the years it's been really interesting to watch her development, see that strength improve, and now she's such an asset to a front group. She's always there. She really works hard and she knows that's one of the best ways to win, but it's that run that hasn't quite come up to the same level of her swim and bike. But if she's got a gap, then there's always a chance. I mean, I don't know if she's going to need more than the 30 seconds, especially with some of those strong runners in the second group. It's really hard to tell. 30 seconds sounds like a lot, but I'm thinking back to Valencia just a few weeks ago, Elisa Tersch ran down a minute gap like it was absolutely nothing.
Ridiculous.
I know Lisa Tersch isn't in this second group, but there is some really fast runners in there.
Yeah, I mean, and she got to the front about, as I recall, it wasn't even that close home, was it? It was more than a kilometre from the finish in a sprint race. Those Tersch heroics.
Yeah, so you think how much time would Lopez need over a 5K?
Yeah, maybe more than 30 seconds, but she may have more than 30 seconds. Just depends what happens in the next, probably 7 kilometres now left on the bike. They're on their penultimate lap. Summer Rappaport obviously has been racing for a long time. I remember her first win in the World Series was in Edmonton in 2016, and she was like really emotional afterwards. She couldn't quite believe that she'd won, almost in tears. And then she had a brilliant year in 2019 where she had 3 podiums: Edmonton, Yokohama, Hamburg.
She always goes well in Yokohama as well.
Yeah.
That's where she qualified for the Olympics, wasn't it, there? Yeah, such a strong athlete, and you think this year she's had to cope with, well, not being in form at the start of the season, but then the repercussions of that. Any other year, it's not great if you're not in form because you want to do well in the series, but this is the worst year to not be in form at the start of the year because that's when all the selection decisions happened. So obviously missed out on that US team, and she's got to think, you've got to have thought leading into it, especially with a medal in the series the year before, that she was one of the athletes maybe contending for that.
Yeah, I just kind of wonder, maybe, after obviously she didn't get selected for Paris, and if she was being honest, she couldn't have expected to be the form that she was in. But it's kind of taken the pressure off a bit now. She doesn't have that kind of Olympic carrot dangling in front of her. And she can just race and enjoy it. And she's certainly been doing that over the last few weeks.
Yeah, there's a certain freedom that comes post-Olympics. And athletes have to deal with it in a different way. Like we've seen Lopez, who's gone off and done some different style of racing, and Rappaport's stuck with the World Triathlon side. It really depends what kind of athlete you are, and what inspires you, what kind of makes you happy, which races that you really like to do. I mean, as you get close to an Olympic cycle, for those athletes who want to go to the games, then all of your focus is going to be on that World Triathlon racing. But this is the time post-Olympics where athletes do have a little bit of freedom to mix it up slightly, as we do see some of the athletes doing. Sinead Williams from South Africa just on the back there. Sinead Williams has raced so much over the last few years. Been that big quest, wasn't it, to try and get to the Olympics, and she did miss out this year. But it was so many races she actually attempted to try and get herself there.
So they've taken the bell. 5 kilometres to go for these two, who've organised themselves absolutely perfectly for the first 15 Ks. That's why that lead. It may have just clawed some time back, actually. I reckon that's come back maybe 23, 24 seconds, something like that. 26.
They've done really well, the second group, haven't they? They haven't let it get away from them.
But you would think from here, if Rappaport and Lopez can keep the gap roughly where it is, trying to give Summer Rappaport nearly half a minute over 5K, tough ask.
It's a really tough ask. I think you're hoping Summer Rappaport has a really bad day if you're in that second group. Athletes in that second group, just because we're not getting the timing. So it's Rosa Tapia, Tamara Gorman, Marcia Alvarez Solis, Verena Steinhauser, Sofia Rodriguez is there, Sinead Williams, Sandra Dode, Maria Carolina Velasquez is there. So they're the athletes that we are currently in that second group and looking to try and run down these lead pair.
Just over 35 minutes into this Brasilia World Cup. Last race of the year on the World Cup circuit for these women.
So I think they're going to be fed up of going over this bridge by the end of the race, because they've got to go over it on the run as well now a couple of times. Although last year was Olympic distance, so anyone that did it last year, at least it's at least half the distance. Although some of the athletes saying they would have, when I listened to the interviews from the athletes, some saying they would have preferred the Olympic. Verena Steinhauser was very happy it was a sprint. She said she feels like she's way more suited to this. Tapia said just got to push hard for that 5K. She knows she's got to really bring it up. She can't rely on the endurance. She has to bring the speed. Different challenges over the sprint and Olympic.
Bridge was completed at a cost of just under $60 million US. That seems cheap to me. I know it was 20 odd years ago, but I'm no architect, but it's a phenomenal piece of work, isn't it?
Oh, it's absolutely incredible. And it's just nice to have this top-level racing back in Brazil. I think that for the Rio Olympics, they had the test event leading up to it, and there's been World Cups in Brazil in the past, but it was almost a 5-year break. Well, no, it was longer than that, wasn't it, before triathlon came back to, the World Cup level came back to Brazil.
It was a host city, Brasilia, for a World Cup of a different kind, the FIFA World Cup in 2014, and then Brasilia hosted the football at the 2016 Olympics.
How far from Rio is Brasilia?
Sound like my geography teacher.
Thought you might know. Had the stat to hand.
My geography teacher's just phoned up and told me it's 1,200 kilometres.
Oh, quite a long way then.
Yeah. Rio's so about 1,200 km south of Brasilia.
I was just thinking in terms of the Olympics, quite away from them for hosting anything.
Yeah, well, they've kind of done that with the Olympics recently, haven't they? Some of the sports are way away from the actual host city.
Well, you think with Paris, the surfing was...
That was a long way. It was in, where was that, in Hawaii, wasn't
French
it?
Polynesia.
Oh, French Polynesia, yeah, French Polynesia, that's right. That's right. Well, actually, in the Paris Olympics, they had some of the football was in the south, was in like Marseille and something like that, so you couldn't really get much further within that country. But yeah, that's probably a record, isn't it? French Polynesia to Paris. So the chasers, if they could maybe shave 4 or 5 seconds off that deficit on this final lap, maybe a chance of running down Summer Rappaport. If they don't, it's going to be difficult.
It's going to be difficult. But Sandra Dode's in there, and I mean, she has so many World Cup medals in the past. She's an excellent runner. She's in really good form as well. She's a 4-time World Cup winner. That 4th in Tongyeong. She's the European Super Sprint champion from this year. So you think that we have those French women who perform at the top on the World Series, like Cassandra Beaugrand, Emma Lombardi, Leonie Perriot. But then underneath that, there's so many great French women at this World Cup level that don't really ever get to see on the World Championship Series. And Sandra Dode is one of those that is so consistent over the years in the World Cup. Her weakness is her swim, which is why sometimes she's exposed then at that World Championship Series level. But at this level, when she's in form, you're pretty much guaranteed she's in that top 5 and more often than not on the podium.
Yeah, Dode would be one that would certainly be fancying her chances of a podium if she comes off the bike in that lead group, in the chasing group rather, which looks like she's going to. Obviously Rosa Tapia as well.
Miria Velasquez as well from Colombia. She's a solid runner. Yeah,
it's only her 7th race of the year actually. Might remember she got hit by a second for silver by Tilda Manson at the Wollongong World Cup back in April.
That was such an epic sprint finish. I just watched that back the other day. I think it came up on a clip of the World Cup, and yeah, great finish. I think 4 or 5 way sprint down the finish line. But with these women here, I mean, I know we've got Summer Rappaport up front. That group that's heading on to the run together from this group, there's so many strong runners. We could see them really battle and really challenge each other as they try and get closer towards the front of this race.
Well, they're not going to have much longer on the bikes. 40 minutes in now, and the 2 leaders will be coming into T2 shortly. Out front the whole way, in the water, in the saddle, Just got to make sure they don't make any silly mistakes here. Make sure you're off the bike before the line. Don't leave helmet outside the box or anything like that to pick up what would be a potentially fatal penalty in terms of getting a gold medal here. Looks like maybe they have made up a bit of time on this last lap. Let's see. So off they come before that line. That's all fine. Rappaport will go to stand number 4. Lopez stand number 11. Hopefully they'll stay in place this time, those stands.
Yeah, it doesn't look like there's any problems there.
Yeah, they've definitely made up some time.
About 15 seconds now, so they really pushed that last lap, the chasers.
So how much of a start are they going to give Rappaport and Lopez? It's definitely going to be double figures, but maybe not much more than that.
And Rappaport, I think, will know that gap's come down, and she's set out fast there. She can't afford to ease away into this. She knows there's going to be some fast runners coming from behind.
Yeah, already she has surged past Victoria Lopez. 13 seconds was the gap out of T2. But that's still a handy lead for Rappaport, because we know how consistently and how well she runs.
She's in the tricky position, isn't she, of being chased. She's the one out front. Dode was quite slow out of transition. She was one of the last ones out. So she'll be looking to try and make that up over this first lap.
Well, apologies for some of the issues we're having with the pictures. Hopefully we'll get them back shortly.
Well, just from that still there, we can see that Rappaport's already put a little bit of time into Lopez, which is what we kind of expected. So we're just moving from the back towards the front there. So that's Shanae Williams. There's Sandra Dode is already running away from her and catching some of the athletes up front.
There's Tapia with Steinhauser right behind her.
And Gorman as well, isn't it?
So there's 3 powerful women right there in your shot.
And Maria Velasquez from Colombia as well. She does tend to improve as the run goes on. Expect kind of a second lap for her to move through. She's not always the best at running out fast through transition. I feel like this is a good position for Steinhauser as well. She hasn't been in the position to challenge for the medals recently, so to be here and be pushing the pace and pushing up towards a podium, I think will be really exciting. And it's so much more enjoyable when you're there racing for the medals. You're at the front of the race, like pushing on, as opposed to always being in that position of trying to play catch up.
121st race today for Verena Steinhauser. Actually, her first World Cup medal back in 2018. She got a bronze in Antwerp. She's also got a bronze in Arzakena since then. So at the moment, Tapia not getting away from Steinhauser, Gorman.
Sofia Rodriguez there as well, just on the back of that group of 4. Can't quite make out what her kit says, but she was in the front group. And they don't run all the way over the bridge like they did on the bike, but almost halfway up to the top. So there is that sort of sense in this run that you're pushing up and then coming down, but look, they've caught Lopez already, so for even half a lap on the run. Managed to close down that with just under 15-second deficit.
Some of the strugglers just coming into transition.
We haven't seen Gina Sereno go out, have we? There's Lawler from the US. She had a good race in Vina Del Mar just last week, getting second, pushed Tapia all the way to the line. But it is a step up to race your first World Cup. The standard does go up.
Yeah, we heard that Sereno was kind of trapped between the second and third chasing group, so imagine she got sucked back into that second chase group. Well, suddenly there's a little bit of daylight now. Rosa Tapia going off in pursuit of Summer Rappaport.
We didn't see Rappaport go around that dead turn, did we? So don't have a sense of where she is on the road and how far ahead she is, or whether that gap has been brought down. That's Sandra Dode on the right there, the small figure moving through.
So probably you would say the best three runners coming to the fore now. We've got Rappaport at the front, and Dode and Rosa Tapia trying to apply pressure and close the gap on the American. Just 2 laps, remember, 2.5 kilometers each lap.
There's Rappaport.
Yeah.
I was looking at the other people running. I was like, no, they're not in the race. There's Rappaport. She's going the other way, and a lot faster as well. There was, yeah, I was looking at the people on the other side of the barrier. So, well, yeah, it's still a good gap, but it looks like that's Sandra Dode, isn't it, pushing the pace on. It's only Tapia that's been able to respond and go with her. Like that, will that 13 seconds be enough?
It's going to be intriguing.
Yeah, I'm gonna look at what their results were in Tonyang. I mean, it's over the 10K, so it's slightly different, isn't it? But I know Dode did have the fastest run there. But I'm just wondering what the difference was. It's hard to know whether that's come down or not, hasn't it?
Yeah, well, they're coming towards the conclusion of the first lap, so we'll get a timing as soon as they go through transition, because the gap going into the run, they'd whittled that down to 13 seconds.
Okay, so in Tonyang, Sandra Dode ran 45 seconds faster than Summer Rappaport.
Wow.
But saying that Summer Rappaport had been in that breakaway and been working hard, but we're in the same situation again here.
That was
Olympic distance, yeah. So, yeah, look at half of that, 22.5 seconds maybe, but it's we're in a similar situation here where Rappaport's been off the front. She's been working hard throughout the whole bike ride. Sandra Dode's been a little bit more cushioned from that, being in a pack and being one of the chasers.
Well, we saw them strung out in the water, and they're certainly strung out now on the run. There's our leader, Summer Rappaport, coming towards the end of her first lap. Dode giving chase with Rosa Tapia right on the Frenchwoman's shoulder. And they are coming. That's the first shot we've had that suggests the gap might be closing.
Guys, still over 10 seconds. It looks like it's smaller, but I think it's only come down a couple of seconds.
Yeah, the camera tends to fall short a little bit, doesn't it?
Tapia's done well too, because she was dropped a little bit there, but she's managed to get her way back on. So as this course is slightly up and then slightly down, it's not massive hills, but some athletes are going to be better at running up the uphill sections, some are going to enjoy the downhills more. So it looks like Tapia has managed to get her way back onto that downhill. Encouraging there for Summer Rappaport as she goes through.
I reckon it's about 8 seconds. Now, yeah, we just had that confirmed. 8 seconds it is. So they clawed 4 seconds back on the first lap.
So Rappaport now could make a decision. She could go, right, okay, ease off the gas slightly, let them come back, and then see if she can stay with them when they get to her, because it feels like if she keeps pushing hard at the front, then she's just going to get run down. So we may see her just ease back slightly, and then when they get to her, she might just try and sit in. But that would be the perfect time for one of these athletes to attack. They've closed that down so quick, haven't they?
Yeah, really impressive from Dode and Tapia. Eight seconds becomes nothing in the blink of an eye. Now, so now we have 3 in a line. Tapia, Dode and Rappaport. Rappaport has to hang tough here if she can. Try and stay with the other 2.
So these are the Steinhauser now leading. I think that is Rodriguez, isn't it? And then we've got Gorman. Wow, Summer Rappaport hasn't been able to stay with them at all. I thought she might be able to hang on. But Rappaport really struggling on this uphill section, and she's then coming under threat from those athletes behind as well. Rosa Tapia pushing it on up the hill. Gorman's taken the lead now.
I wonder whether Gorman might be able to get to Rappaport.
I think well, that's what she's thinking. Yeah, she's definitely had a surge. You can see Rappaport fading slightly in front of her. Rappaport's really going to have to work hard over this second lap to hold on to that 3rd place position.
Well, this is fascinating now, isn't it? We've got Tapia on the left. I know it feels like we're on a waltzer. And on the right, Sandra Dode. Quite hard to see. I don't think there was much of a gap. Quite difficult when they're racing completely different sides of the road. Gorman trying to get away from Steinhauser. Gorman currently 4th. Yeah, she's going to get her, I think.
Wow.
But Steinhauser may not be done with either. Yeah, Rappaport starts to unravel a little bit here as Gorman goes past her and into the bronze medal position as it stands. But look at this. We can't see across to where Dode is. Well, yeah, she's definitely put distance into Dode. Yeah, she's way back.
Wow, this is a great push here from Tapia. We know she's a great runner, but from that World Series medal she got just a couple of years ago. But like you said, she hasn't shown us that form all year, but she's really coming into form. Tamara Gorman now in 3rd position.
Be a massive result for her after all the issues she's had if she could get a medal here to close out 2024, and she's looking good to do it because there's a gap now between her and Steinhauser. Tapia just lapping one of the other athletes.
Yeah, Tapia, who was 11th at the series final recently, she said she was really annoyed because she just lost that top 10 and she was hanging on for that top 10 over the last bit. But again, that's her best ever series final she's had. So they're coming in strong form at the end of this year. Gorman's really used this uphill section of the bridge. Looks like she's moving towards Dode now.
Well, this is phenomenal from the American. Can she catch Sandra Dode and get a silver? Don't think anyone's going to catch Rosa Tapia. She is away and gone on this final lap of the run. We're 55 minutes in here. And after a bit of a swimming exhibition from Rappaport and Lopez, and on the bike too, it looks like the effort that the chasers put in on that last bike lap, and then the power of Rosa Tapia's run is potentially going to win the day here. It's hers to lose, obviously, from now.
Yeah, incredible gap she's opened up over the second lap.
He's giving a running exhibition at the moment, the Mexican.
And what a perfect way to finish her season. If she manages to hang on now for the win, it definitely looks like she will, but don't want to jinx it. Things always can happen towards the end of a race, but she looks fantastic at this point.
Haven't seen too much of her on the World Triathlon circuit this year. She was top 20 in the Olympics. That was only her 4th race of the year. Before that, she didn't finish in Cagliari. Just about top 20 in Yokohama. Well, a bronze here last year, but looks like going much better here in 2024 in the season finale.
Yeah, and it's always good to finish the season on a win. Well, it'd be 2 wins as she won in Vina del Mar just last week.
Yeah.
I mean, not as a higher level race as this, but still a great performance. Sandra Dode cannot afford to ease back, though. Tamara Gorming's breathing down her neck from behind.
Yeah, Dode looks like she's keeping that gap relatively stable. The last time we saw it, and that was a couple of minutes ago.
And Gorman, she can't relax either. Those athletes behind are still pushing on. Not sure that's Summer Rappaport managing to run her way back up to Gorman. A lot of lead changes on the run.
So on the uphill section, yeah, Gorman looks like she's about to come under pressure.
From Rappaport.
Yeah, so it's going to be an American battle for the bronze by the look of it.
Yeah, Sandra Dode, that gap does look quite big now. So just this last little push uphill, and once they make this dead turn, they're downhill all the way back towards transition then. Tapia seems to really have used these uphill sections, used the downhills. She seems to like this hillier style of running. Some athletes rather those fast, flatter courses, and some really thrive when it is a little bit more challenging, a little bit more twisty.
Came here straight after that victory that she had in Vina del Mar in Chile last weekend, Rosa Tapia. So she looks like she's got her preparation absolutely bang on. And not far to go now.
Perfectly timed as well, that push at the start of the second lap. She must have been feeling really good over the first lap and was able to hold it there, keep confident, just flying down that hill.
Yeah, no panic either on the bike when the gap at one stage was around about half a minute. He managed to get it back to, what, 12 seconds coming into T2, and that absolutely critical as well in the eventual outcome. Because unless something quite extraordinary happens, she's going to be breasting the tape shortly. Yeah, smiling already. She knows that she's got the win locked up here. She's plotted this after coming from Vina del Mar. Absolutely no danger. And she is going to take the tape. Tapia wins, and wins by a margin.
Such a big margin, considering how close they were heading into that second lap. She's absolutely demolished the field over the second lap.
Well, we know Dode is going to come home for second. That is indeed Sandra Dode. And that is Tamara Gorman getting third, and that is her first World Cup medal for 5 years. All the injury issues she's had, that's a phenomenal performance from the American. Rappaport was fourth, and Steinhauser fifth.
Big run there from Rappaport. She's on the floor as well. She's really put everything into this race. Rodriguez from Mexico, a solid result for her.
Velasquez from Colombia using her biggest weapon very effectively on the run. Just shy of an hour, by the way, the winning time. Around about 59.25 I had.
Quite a slow swim as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, 10-minute swim.
Lopez, so inside the top 10 for her.
Well, we know how good a runner Dode is, but she just couldn't live with Rosa Tapia today.
I mean, that's such an impressive run from Tapia. We shouldn't be surprised, I think, thinking back to that race in Yokohama where she got second. She was absolutely incredible, but it just hasn't been there recently. But so that was fantastic. And you think, what a great end to the season. It'll be great to see her come into this kind of form and show that in the World Series next year. Oh, Rappaport really pushed herself there. Look, she's really struggling to walk. Janine Williams just finishing. She was in that second group on the road.
Big gaps, aren't there, between these finishes?
Yeah, absolutely huge. I think this happens when it's a small field as well. Gina Serrano coming through. Just didn't have the best swim today and was really exposed out there.
Yeah, never had any kind of a position on the bike. Ended up in the second chase group. Well, you could probably hear Elias Sanudo, our reporter out there in Brasilia, is talking with Rosa Tapia, but unfortunately we can't see the pictures. We can't really hear it loudly enough, so sorry about that. I think we might be able to start again. Hopefully Elias down there now with Rosa, and we've got our cameraman there too.
Rosa, what a way to finish the season, no, with a bang.
Yeah, I'm very, very happy because there was a long time since I didn't wear the #1 or the yellow cap. So this race was like really good for me, this opportunity. And I'm very happy to be done with the season. It was really long, really hard, but I'm glad that at the end it was a good result.
I mean, it was a really hard race for you guys, especially when you saw Summer and Victoria having quite a breakaway on the swim and on the beginning of the bike. Were you trying to organize the chase group?
Well, there were many girls that were like helping me to push and try to get them. Unfortunately, we couldn't, but I only thought of like run my best 5K, and I visualized myself like this the night before, so I'm happy it turned out well.
We saw you like doing a really fast second transition and then going all over it, and especially on the little hill before the second time you went on the bridge is when you saw Summer pretty close and went for it, no?
Yeah, I was getting motivated when I saw her like getting closer and closer. I mean, she's a really good runner too, so it was very hard to get her, but it worked to like be conservative like the first lap and then just like push all the way through the second lap. Yeah.
Congratulations, well done and well-deserved rest.
Thank you. I just want to add thank to my coach, which is my biggest support, and my family. Thank you, guys.
After the last few seasons.
So glad we got to hear from Rosa Tapia. Clearly, really happy to close the season. And here's Sandra Dode.
Like that run today, like we saw you doing it really fast and catch some time in the last lap of the bike, but then
Or hopefully coming up shortly.
But was it going through your mind that you could actually catch up with Victoria and Summer?
No, I wasn't thinking I could.
Aí o Félix agora.
And I guess that after this season you've raced a few Continental Cups and America's Cups. Back on World Cup level, what is the goal for next season?
You know, I'll just train throughout the winter and see how I do next year. I don't really have any goals right now. I'll have big goals this winter, but yeah, it just feels good to be racing.
Congratulations, well done today, and take some rest in the off-season.
Só tira esse negócio aí primeiro. Aí sobe aí.
When we saw you like losing almost 40 seconds at some points on the bike, but then being able to catch up and finish in the second place.
Yes, it's been a while since I had a podium on a World Cup. I finished fourth 2 weeks ago in Miyazaki, Japan. So yes, I'm very happy to be on the podium today. And Rosa had a very good run. She was very intense. So I tried to stay with her, but it was hard. So yes, I'm happy with this second place.
And at some point we saw Tamara and Summer come in. Were you looking back and trying to just save some legs for the last few meters?
Yes, I was afraid they could take my second place. So on the last K, I tried to be faster, and yes, it worked. So I'm happy.
Congratulations, well done today.
Thank you.
So hopefully we'll hear from Tamara Gorman shortly. And just a note, by the way, that the women's presentation ceremony will be after the men's race, which starts in less than an hour. So there'll be no women's presentation in the next few minutes, but hopefully we'll get to hear from Tamara Gorman because, as we mentioned, it's her first World Cup podium for more than 5 years. Obviously, she's had quite a long time with no racing. She missed more than 2 years of racing up to May of this year. Got a silver in an America's Cup race in Canada in July. It's actually her 6th podium. That last podium she had was in Banyoles, a silver. Banyoles in Spain 5 years ago.
Long time between the podiums.
Yeah. I think we're about to go down and hear from Tamara with a line.
Sometime in the last lap of the bike, but then we saw you leave in transition, focused, but was it going through your mind that you could actually catch up with Victoria and Summer?
No, I wasn't thinking I could even be on the podium when I started the run. I was just thinking to stay relaxed and just do everything that I can, like that I'm in control of. And yeah, it ended up being on the podium, and yeah, I felt strong, surprisingly.
And I guess that after this season you've raced a few Continental Cups, America's Cups, back on World Cup level. What is the goal for next season?
You know, I'll just train throughout the winter and see how I do next year. I don't really have any goals right now. I'll have to make those this winter, but yeah, it just feels good to be on the podium and to be racing back at this level.
Congratulations, well done today, and take some rest during the off-season.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you can understand why it feels great to be racing for her after all the injury issues she's had. So as I mentioned, there will not be a women's presentation until after the men's race. The men's race is at 9 a.m. local time. We'll be back on air at 10 minutes to 9, so that's just shy of 40 minutes. And we'll bring you the men's race live and both the podium presentations. Until then, though, from Helen and myself, it's goodbye.
Vamos lá então agora para finalizar conosco aqui. Vem a nossa capa que encerra a prova.
E outra, eu consegui apoiar o pé, sabe? Eu tava com a perna durada, mas o negócio machucando minha perna. Você na primeira depois tá vendo. Porque acontece, fazer para nada, tava com a perna.